Next, we're going to talk about some specialized veins and vein connections or vessel connections. So coronary sinus. Coronary sinus is a vein. It is the large vein that collects all of the blood from the coronary circulation. So we learned about all the vessels that you're required to know for coronary circulation. You have the left coronary artery that branches off into the anterior interventricular artery, also known as the LAD, which is the left anterior descending artery. The left coronary also branches off to the circumflex that comes around on the left side of the back of the heart, over here. And then you have your right coronary artery that branches off to become your marginal artery, but the right coronary artery does come towards the back and meets up with the circumflex on the other side. But once those arteries have delivered blood to the heart itself, it is cardiac veins that then collect that blood. Once the oxygen and nutrients have been delivered and the waste have been picked up, the cardiac veins then collect that blood and return it to the coronary sinus. And the coronary sinus, through its opening, puts that blood into the right atrium. Now, the coronary sinus is just a large vein. So it is an enlarged, it is a vein, but it's an enlarged endothelium without tunic. So it's a specialized vein and does not have all the layers that all the other vessels have. It's just an enlarged endothelium. All it does is collect blood to return to the right atrium via the coronary sinus opening. So make sure that you do remember that. Okay. And that's all for the coronary sinus. It's a specialized vein. Now, one thing I do want to go over are you need to be able to identify the difference between an artery and a vein in your veins lab. It's activity 6 in your veins lab. And actually, I think it's activity 6 in the veins lab. Do I have it with me? Don't think I have it with me. It's with that other one, but I'm pretty sure it's activity 6. But you're going to be looking at a slide underneath the microscope, and you have to be able to tell the difference between an artery versus a vein. It's pretty easy to tell. Arteries, and this one on the bottom is an artery. Arteries are going to have a thicker wall, especially the tunica media is the thickest. They are higher pressure. So blood cells goodness. So blood cells or blood in general take up more room in the lumen, and it holds its round shape. So you'll see here that the wall, and I apologize so much for these allergies, but the artery wall, much thicker, and actually I'll do it in black so you could see a little better. The artery wall is so much thicker than the vein wall. It's so tiny. Okay, and then like I mentioned, it is a higher pressure system. So you'll notice this lumen here is filled with blood. That blood is taking up all that space. That is a very high pressure system there. Versus veins, the blood is only taking up this much room. And you have this much open space. It's a much lower pressure system. So with veins, it's going to have a much thinner wall, lower pressure. So blood takes up relatively less room. In the lumen, and it has an irregular shape. not round. Not normally, it's not as close to a perfect round shape as the artery. So you can see it's a little bit has a little bit of an irregular shape because it does not have that thick muscular wall, that round muscular wall to keep its structure. It's very thin walled and has an irregular shape lumen. You can see that same thing here. You can tell that the left one is the artery, has a much thicker wall. Lumen is a lot smaller versus a vein that has much thinner wall and again has it's less pressure. You have all this free room where there is no blood. Okay, it's much less pressure system. Here's another example. The artery is over here, even though it has a larger lumen. These might be like a smaller artery and a smaller vein, but still, this tunica media is much thicker than over here. It's a much thinner wall over here, for the tunica media at least. But what's the telltale sign here? I don't see any blood on either one of these, but the telltale sign here is the shape. This one has a much more round shape. This one has a much more irregular shape here. So this is the vein on the right side. I think that's all of my examples. Is there one more? Oh, one more. This one too, the artery has a much more defined round shape. It's oval, but it's a much more regular shape than this irregular, not any kind of real shape here. And then the pressure. So you can see how the blood takes up much more room here. There's less spaces here versus the vein. There's lots of empty space where there's no blood at all. Okay, so the vein is on the right side. So hopefully in the practical, if I decide to have another microscope, you should be able to tell the difference between an artery and a vein underneath the microscope. Okay, then I think I'll have another really short video on anastomoses.